Republican Senator Ron Johnson is a member of the Budget Committee. He joins me now. But before we get to the budget, you ran a large business.
Right.
You heard David Seamus there. Look, they're implementing this thing, whether you like it or not. I know you ran against it. What do you want to watch for? As a businessman, maybe take your partisan hat off aside. What you heard, you've heard his numbers in there. What are you looking for to see if this thing may work to your surprise, for instance?
Well, I mean, the last comment in terms of what the composition of these exchanges are going to be is extremely important, because the reason they need a third of young, healthy people is they need them to subsidize the older, sicker people. So I think young people are going to be shocked at how expensive their coverage is going to become because of that subsidy. The other thing from a standpoint of employers, and this is what I've always been concerned about, is the incentive for employers long term and probably even short term is, do I pay $15,000 for a family plan, which, by the way, is up $2,500 rather than down $2,500, try and comply with now more than 20,000 pages of law, rules, and regulations, or do I pay the $2,000 or $3,000 penalty? And I'm not throwing my employees to the wolves. I'm actually making them eligible for huge subsidies in the exchange. I mean, if you have a family household income $64,000.
But this trend was happening anyway. A lot of businesses, I mean, that's fair, right?
But look at what Rahm Emanuel is doing. You know, the former chief of staff of the White House, he's dumping Chicago retirees into the exchanges. Remember, President Obama very famously said, if you like your health care plan, you're going to be able to keep it, period. That's not the truth. They're going to be broken promise after broken promise after broken promise when this health care law gets implemented.
Is it possible the exchanges work better if there are more people in it?
Well, probably the more
because
people.
Of the share, because
sure,
of the, yeah.
But again, how do you incentivize people to actually do that, and at what cost?
All right, I want to go to what's going on in the Senate now. Are you as optimistic as I am? It seems like there are now 3 or 4 paths to avert short-term this shutdown.
I've never thought we'd have a shutdown. There's no desire, certainly on the part of Republicans. Somehow leadership always comes together with all these time constraints to at least put something short-term so we don't shut down the government. So I don't. Particularly, I mean, I'm somewhat worried about it because of the dysfunction that is Washington, D.C. I've been trying to work, behind the scenes to pass a continuing resolution since July. It's not like September 30th is a surprise. So I really want Americans to focus on the dysfunction that is Washington, D.C., there's a federal government right now, and really contemplate, well, this is the entity that's going to be taking over larger shares of our healthcare system, and start questioning that.
Let's talk about the debt limit here. Should this be this negotiating tool? You talk to people in business, your former colleagues in the they're not happy about this. They don't like the idea of the debt limit being used this way.
Any time the President of the United States comes to Congress asking for the authority to increase the debt burden on our children and grandchildren, we ought to have a serious discussion. We ought to have a very robust debate.
Even if it's to pay for bills that have already been...
Listen, the reason we have to increase the debt limit is because of future deficit spending. Sure, these are already authorized programs, but it's the future deficit spending that's the problem. So I just don't buy the President's argument, oh, this is already money spent. No, this is future spending, future deficits. We've got to come to terms with the fact that over the next 30 years, we did a projection working in the White House, a deficit of $107 trillion over the next 30 years. Those are some scary numbers that most people in Washington don't want to face, but that's the type of problem we're dealing with, a long-term deficit where the federal government goes from 23% of our economy to over 39% over 30 years.
I want to play a quick clip here. Senator Patty Murray, who's, of course, chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, on what they want to shorten the quote-unquote CR to see if there's actually a way to do long-term or at least an annual budget. Okay. Here's what she said.
This bill is simply a clean resolution to allow our government to function. It is not a place where we should be negotiating a bunch of other deals, some agreeable, some not agreeable. Let's get this done, and then we can have a debate about all the other issues and put it in our budget, which is what we should be focusing on.
So her vision is by November 15th that they're going to send back it looks like one that ends on November 15th, that you guys spend the next 6 weeks actually trying to deal with the individual appropriations. What's the possibility that that can happen?
Probably pretty low. I mean, in 2 years,
you're not optimistic.
In 2 years, the Senate hasn't passed even one appropriation bill to just show how dysfunctional this is. Listen,
what's the House up to? They've only gotten 4 out of the big 13.
I understand, but it seems kind of pointless when the Senate's not going to function as well either. From my standpoint, again, I think the House has got enough advice from senators, but I've been talking to House members. What I hope happens is that the House passes a CR at budget control level caps that basically President Obama signed, Democrat senators voted for,
Okay.
The only two things I'd add, and I think they have to add these things to get the votes in the House, would be a rejection of the OPM ruling granting special treatment to members of Congress for the health care.
Right.
And I'd like to see repeal the medical device tax. We had over
Seems
70
like
senators,
70
because
or
that is
80 senators.
incredibly harmful. It is just drying up investment in the medical device industry,
Yeah.
limiting innovation, driving jobs overseas. So that would be something I think Harry Reid would have to pass.
It sounds like that is, you talked to Dick Durbin, supported that on this show
That'd be
a couple
great.
days ago. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin, thanks for coming on.
Have a great day.